for the next session of Green and Shy. I'm here with my sidekick, Alton Erdemir, with Brad Tolinski, who's the editor and publisher of Cannabliss Magazine. Welcome, Brad.
Hey guys, how's it? Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. So Alton, tell them a little bit about Green and Shy, and then we're going to go into our interview with Brad for this evening.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to have you here, Brad. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Green and Shy. As you know, if you haven't been able to go to one of our great events, we're taking things virtually. And Green and Shy really put this platform together here in Chicago when it was legalized to be a great platform to connect people with opportunities. Different opportunities to learn about the industry, learn about different skill sets and how to get involved with the industry, different opportunities for jobs and different career paths, as well as if you're trying to get into the business, the legal help, the process, the support groups that you need, some of the incubators, as well as the thought leadership like people with Brad that have the experience and connection. So Green and Shy is here to really connect people with the opportunities, especially the enthusiasts here in Chicago and nationwide, because there is an opportunity. And over the last 3 months, the only thing that's changed in the cannabis world is that it went from being illegal here in the Chicago to becoming essential. So there's a lot of things that have happened here, and we have a lot of great things to talk about. So I'm excited to have you here, Brad, and I'll let Mr. Garms himself start off with the questions.
So Brad, you and I have had some nice conversations leading up to this for the last couple of weeks, and I really was impressed with your knowledge base and all the things you've done, including your background in the guitar industry as a publisher prior to coming over here, and some of the interesting folks you've been able to meet. So why don't you start off by telling our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started with the magazine and some of the things that have happened since, and we can go in to talk about some different companies that you think are well run in different sectors of the cannabis industry. And we'll kind of cover a gamut of things tonight that could be really a lot of fun for you, our listeners, and ourselves. So if you would.
I'm hoping it's going to be fun. Everybody needs to be cheered up a little bit during these times, eh?
Yeah, they sure do.
Yeah. So for many, many years, I was the editor-in-chief of Guitar World magazine. And, it was so much fun. It was a great experience. I'm a musician. I got to meet all my heroes. But what was really interesting, people ask me, how did you make that pivot from the guitar thing to cannabis? And I tell them this every time I go, because this to me is, probably the most important story of our time. It affects every sector. In a certain way, it's sort of like how rock and roll used to be to me, it affects politics, it affects entertainment, it affects, art and economics, and cannabis might even be more interesting because of how it affects the medical industry as well, and so many other things. So I just felt that this was the story of our time, and I wanted to get involved in it and helping to tell that story as well.
Well, good. Why don't we start out, Brad? We were talking the other day about the CBD industry and packaging and some of the things you see as people doing it right, people not doing it as right. Would you like to elaborate and talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I started working on Cannabliss, this magazine, about, it's been a little over a year now. And when I first started, I only had a casual, sort of a casual association with CBD and all the cannabis products that were on the market. And as soon as I got involved with the magazine, I started to look around and see all the products and how they were trying to reach people and how I was going to cover them in the magazine. And I noticed a lot of things that were a little disappointing to me, especially in the CBD area, because in the CBD market, they're trying to reach out to people who aren't familiar with cannabis and bring them in. And I felt just a lot of the packaging involved was confusing, didn't look good, hard to read, hard to figure out. And that frustrated me because whenever you hear people say, oh, CBD, that's a bunch of snake oil, bad packaging only helps perpetuate that idea.
Well, on that point right there, you mentioned snake oil, and it's actually an interesting point because some people are very uneducated on the topic of CBD, hemp oil, and they think they're getting one product, a CBD oil product, but they're really getting a hemp oil product, and there's a big difference between the two. One's from the flower, one's from the seed. Huge differences in what they can be used for. So maybe there's a couple examples, and maybe something that you could share on that, because I know, I've looked in some of my family members, and they're like, "Oh, that's my hemp oil. What are you cooking with that? What are you taking it for?" And people don't know the difference.
Yeah. I mean, some of that has to do with also the way different states make you mark up your products. So, like for instance, there is a company called Nature's Plus, who's a very well-regarded pharmaceutical company, and they make great CBD products, but they're so cautious on how they label everything that they don't even have the word CBD on their packaging. Mm-hmm. It's listed as phytocannabinoid. And you really have to sort of know what you're doing to see how much CBD is actually involved in the bottle. So that's frustrating to me. But there are a number of companies that actually do this well, that make it easy for the consumer. A couple that I could think of off the top of my head is there's a company called CB Distillery, and there's another company called Charlotte's Web, very famous company. And those guys sort of get it right. My biggest frustration about the CBD world is that often when you look at a bottle, it doesn't tell you how much CBD you're getting per dosage. Rather, it has the amount of CBD that's in the entire bottle. And right there, that just completely throws people off. Like, okay, there's, 1,500 megs of CBD in this bottle. What does that mean? For somebody that's not involved in any deep way with CBD, automatically you're thinking, I don't know what that is. Is that a lot? Is that too little? How much is in a single dosage? That's really what you want to know. And so few companies really do that.
Well, just along those lines as well, you also have that same train of thought on full spectrum, nano delivery. I mean, do you want the full spectrum, or maybe you only need part of the spectrum? How do you know what you actually need, Yeah. And, some people don't know all the benefits. They're still mapping it out. I mean, some of the new ones like CBG and CBC and all these new cool things that they're finding out, there's no one really pushing the gambit to educate the crowd on what they're actually getting.
Well, you get to the heart of what I was trying to do with my magazine, Cannabliss. I felt that there was so much education that needed to be done in the market, and it needed to be done in a super friendly way that looked friendly to the consumer. It didn't look, quote unquote, like, a typical cannabis magazine. And, the way we designed Cannabliss, which I'll hold up a cover right here. I don't know if people could see that.
Yes.
It just looks like a really nice lifestyle magazine, something friendly that you could pick up. And we always make sure in every issue to try to answer as many of those kinds of questions that you're asking about. Like, we don't want people to feel that we're too cool to answer the basic questions, which is really what needs to happen here.
It really is, because there are so many people that are not educated in this space, including, I think, a lot of the people that are marketing CBD products. Yeah. I find a lot of times when I go to a trade show, you can ask them questions and they don't know the answers. And they're the supposed representatives of the company.
Yeah.
So.
And it's even sort of interesting, like your audience might disagree with me on this. But I think it's even funny when you get into the world of flower. And, there's all these great names of the strains, and they're all imaginative, and it's cool, and it's sort of fun in a way. But on another level, it's totally confusing, again, to the novice. Um, I'd like to bring up another company that I think does something interesting that not many of the other flower companies do. It's a company out of California called Candescent, and Candescent labels their products not by strain, but by the sorts of effects that it has on you. Like, this will be to calm you, this will be to make you more alert, this will be, and they have different names for it that make it clear as to, what this particular strain of flower is going to do for you psychologically. I would like to see more of that.
Yeah, I would too. I think Leafly's trying to start that trend, and Alton's a big fan of Leafly because of that.
Yeah, actually, one of the big things I always talk about is kind of reinvent my background to get into the positions that you wanted early on. I took a bud tending course that Leafly at one of their events was giving away. Great course, because what you learn is not just the basics. You learn what they need to be able to know to help people, because they're not really doctors. It's kind of interesting because you have something that's treated like a drug and a food, right? So you have to not say it's going to cure your headache, but it'll help you feel this way. So a lot of the times, for instance, an example, I want something that is a sativa. Well, that doesn't really help the bud tender when there's 20 different strains, but what are you trying to get? What kind of feeling or what kind of activity are you trying to do? Well, we want to be energetic, but we also want to relax and not be stressed. Okay, well, maybe this type of Pink Panther that's not as strong as a sativa, but it has these other effects on there would be a perfect one for your adventure. And they're teaching more so to prescribe and recommend things based off of feeling or the activity, because one, you might get in trouble saying this is going to cure your depression. But on the other side, it also allows them to realize that it's not just a prescription. It's based off of your environment, what you've eaten and done that day, and your mood and what you're trying to feel as well. So it's very tricky. And I think Leafly does a great job both on the THC and CBD side. I mean, you have some of these strains, like I was just talking to my friend about Wedding Crasher. It goes into the details that it has even 1% CBG, has all the terpenes listed out, and they only have they have their own mechanism of showing you using shapes and colors what's the indica, what's the sativa, what's the CBD, what terpenes are involved. Very fascinating, and they have great courses. I would recommend anyone looking into that that's interested.
No, the people at Running Leafly do it right. They're brilliant over there. I couldn't agree with you. But getting back to what we were talking about before about this, about the marketing and how to sell this and how to get people educated. Shouldn't the people making the products be more responsible for telling their consumers how they're going to feel it or what it's going to be? That's what I'm saying. It's like that should be part of the packaging. It shouldn't be, okay, here I'm buying this thing, and now I have to go over to this website and try to figure out now from you know what I mean? I feel that the people making the products should be at least a little more sensitive to how to educate the consumer.
I would agree with that. So Brad, would you like to cover some other subjects that you might have in mind tonight? We talked earlier also about companies experimenting with cannabinoids.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting.
Yeah. We're all learning so much right now. I mean, before it was THC and CBD, and it was almost as much as we could handle. But as all of you guys know, I mean, that's just a small part of the plant. The plant, has so many other cannabinoids in it. And I was just reading today about this one cannabinoid now called CBM, which I wasn't familiar with, that they're finding may help with diabetes. So I'm always sort of my interest is always picked by companies that sort of go out of the lane at least a little bit of not just doing THC and CBD. Like for instance, there's this company out in Portland, Oregon called Lady J's, and they're run by this great group of girls. I mean, they're really their whole goal initially was to be able to reach out to women more and to focus their products so it looked more friendly to women. But they make all sorts of great stuff, and they're making a new flower product that is just focused on CBG. And I don't know. Have you guys tried CBG at all? Have you guys had any experience with that?
I personally have, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if I would use it a lot, but it is a different type of experience and a different type of adventure. And I tip my hat off to them for taking this one little area that's a little bit more obscure and making a product so we can try it, and see if it likes us, how it affects us. Jetty, which is pretty famous flower brand out in California, they're always coming up with new products. They just released one called they released a Doug's Farron vape that has this one cannabinoid called THCV, and it sort of it has a strange effect. It relieves anxiety, but it still amps you up a little bit. And to me, I don't know, I find that stuff fascinating, and I would encourage any of the companies out there to try to take some other area other than THC and CBD and just try to explore it, for the sake of all of us that want to try something new, or who knows, just the way CBD reacts to somebody in an incredibly positive way. Maybe one of these other strains will unlock some other great cure that we don't know about yet.
Through the magazine, do you get acquainted with people that are doing actual pure research, probably outside of the United States with THC because of our restrictions here? But are you running into anyone in any of the countries, Israel or other places, that are doing anything really interesting that you see being advanced from anything else you've possibly seen in the mainstream?
Well, there is this company called Tikkun and you can look them up online. And they're sort of the main conduit for medical research in Israel. You can look up online and they catch you up with the latest and the greatest research. And I have two reporters from Cannabliss in Israel that are reporting back to me. What I would say about Israel, or about this topic in general, is this. It's not so much that they've had these huge breakthroughs, as much as it is that they're working on it. Like, they have a whole serious medical team of people working on exploring cannabis and its potential as a medicine. And it's just something that we don't really have here in the United States. In fact, every doctor that I speak with in the US has to be so incredibly careful about what they say. And again, this gets back to this problem about the FDA not making it legal across all the states. And all the doctors have to be so cautious. And what that means is, I don't mind caution, but what this means is that we keep on getting more behind and behind and behind in our research. And it would be great if we were able to just use Israel's research, but a lot of it has to be done here in the United States. So where I have to applaud Israel and other places is, again, they're putting medical resources behind all of this anecdotal evidence that we're all familiar with. And America is just sitting back here and sort of twiddling their thumbs. And that's very frustrating.
It is. Well, it's like we have our hands tied in the medical field here because the way cannabis is a class 1 drug.
Yes.
And it's just ridiculous. And it's putting us behind, like we lead in technology with the Silicon Valley. We could easily lead this with our medical professionals if they would just open doors.
Yeah. And, you know, I want to say, because I don't want to get into this whole make America great thing. It's not so much that we'll get behind. It's as much as it is that if you could only imagine unleashing the resources that we have in the United States,
yes,
to really find out more about this plant and what it can do for all of us, the mind boggles. Instead of taking 5-10 years to figure out that it's going to help with diabetes.
Brad, I got a question for you. So we're talking about, you know, how the packaging, it's very important, especially for the uneducated consumer. But on the business side, there's a lot of people that have great ideas. Some people have even great CBD farms that they're directly working with. Some people have companies that will white label. If I'm starting a business, why don't we do that? If I'm starting a business and I want to really get my message across, how do I find the right partner for my packaging? What am I looking for? Because let's face it, I can get some expensive packaging. I can get something from Alibaba online and it could be the same cartridges. How do I know what to look for? I mean, are there certain people you recommend to consult on that? Because there's a lot of people that have these dreams and they want, you know, Alton CBD. It would be Alton's Gold CBD, but you know, that's another story.
You know, I don't think it is the fault of the marketer or the packager. I think if it's not right, would be more on Alton. You know, it's like him telling them what to do and having the right information on the package. I don't see that half of the time, you know.
So there's no process that, like, there's no companies that say, hey, if you want us to package it, this is our process. Every company that we represent, we do a lab testing and we put these specifications and then we do a design with you to get your story across. You know, these CBD products, maybe it's CBG like we're talking. There's a big application for anti-inflammatory for sports on that, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of story. There's no companies that will work with someone to do that.
You know what? There may be. I just don't have the answer for you. I don't mind.
We just start a company.
Yeah, absolutely. An advisory marketing company. I'd have a lot to say on the topic. I do have to say one super cool resource online. Are you guys hip to this company called CBD Validator?
No, I haven't heard about it. Tell us about it. Brad.
So CBD Validator is, they call themselves the first completely independent, unbiased help for the consumer to navigate and evaluate CBD products. And oh my God, these guys are amazing how deep they've gone into hundreds of CBD products. If any of your people that are watching right now pick up something and they want to know what's actually in it, how good the product is, go directly to CBD Validator. They have so much there. And as far as I can figure, they're completely independent. Like, it's not in the pocket of this company or that company. So the information there I've been able to see, I check it out all the time.
Is there a link, cbdvalidator.com?
Yeah.
It is, okay.
Yeah. So anyways, I definitely recommend that.
Good, that was one I was not familiar with. Are you familiar with a company called Strain Genie?
No.
They've been working with 23andMe and other genealogy, and where they're actually taking the DNA of a human being and sequencing it. They're also sequencing the plant DNA. And then they're looking at dosage and what best fits our endocannabinoid system along with the other. And I was just wondering if you've had any interviews in your magazine with anyone doing that.
No, but I'm going to.
I could introduce you to a couple folks there that are very, very interesting. I think you'd enjoy them, Brad.
Absolutely. There's it's sort of fun. We're talking about whether it's Leafly or we're talking about CBD validator.
Yeah.
Or what was her name again?
Strain Genie.
Strain Genie.
GENIE.
I got you.
Yeah.
It is interesting to see some of the different online companies that have popped up that, I found interesting or entertaining or enlightening somehow. In our last issue, in the third issue of Cannabliss, we did a story on a company called God's Greenery. Mm-hmm. And they call themselves the leading Christian online resource for CBD. And I thought this is sort of a wonderful thing, not from a religion point of view. But again, in order to normalize CBD, in order to normalize cannabis, this is such a huge sector of our country that I would automatically assume would just shut down to sort of the idea of using cannabis, even in a medical sense. And they've completely gone out of their way to try to educate Christians. It's totally focused on CBD, but saying, hey, you should be aware of the medical benefits of this. And again, it's not really my cup of tea, but I'm glad somebody out there is doing this kind of thing and talking to people that might not have the education and educating them. Another company that I found recently that I thought was sort of cool on a completely different track is a company called Jennifer M. And what they do is they make beautiful cannabis jewelry. Like, it's really nice and understated, and some of it's really expensive, like, diamonds and silver and all, but it's really well done, tastefully done. And as you guys know, like most of the stuff that's associated with cannabis tends to be just like sort of super junky looking, which in a way, also, cheapens it or makes it not seem serious, so it's a very subtle thing, but I thought that Jennifer M was something really cool and fun.
I think I've been on their site before. Is it GENNIFER?
Yeah, and then M.
Yeah.
Brad, let me ask you. So it sounds like with your magazine, you're getting some very, very interesting stories, cool things to cover. On the side of the business and the people that are providing the story, how do you find these stories, or how does a company, let's say, that has an interesting story find someone like yourself? And that's an area that a lot of people would love to explore and get some publicity out there, but also be portrayed in the right light. What do you go through when you find a company for your magazine?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, because when I first started the magazine, right, like the world was my oyster. Right? Because I hadn't done anything with any of the companies, but I started finding myself sort of going through different companies and looking for new stories. And I would have to go out there and really sort of hunt and peck, and find things. Like Jennifer M., for example, we were just talking about. I literally just found that on my own through digging around the internet. I was wondering whether there was, some hip cannabis fashion that I didn't know about, and I sort of came across that. But I will say there are some really good cannabis publicists out there. There are some that aren't so good, but there's a couple of people who really sort of knock it out of the park. And, they come to me with stories and pitches and stuff all the time, just like any other magazine editor. So I know that costs money, and maybe not all the startup companies have money, but that's one way to do it. But guys, there's nothing like if you see a magazine or you see a newspaper and you want to be at it and you have a good story angle. I mean, these days you should just reach out and shake some hands. You know what I mean? Like,
Pick up the phone and call the editor, right?
Pick up the phone and call the editor. I mean,
right.
Dan, it's how we connected.
Yeah, I just picked up the phone and called you one day.
Sounds like networking.
Yes, exactly. But
really? Yes, it is.
That's not a bad word.
By the way, we have a question from somebody, but we're not going to questions yet, but somebody wanted to know how they could get into your magazine. We already had that question come up, and I'll just turn them on to you later.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to share.
I know that.
Mm-hmm.
So also, if we could move on to some other subjects, how about some other online resources that you know of? I mean, there's a number of shows like ours. I mean, and there's some that are really much more established than we are. We just started in Chicago, but could you name anyone that's on the national scale that other people should be listening to, where it's just a wealth of information about subjects in relation to the cannabis industry, the CBD side, the THC side, or combination of both?
I don't know. I think you guys are killing it. I want to know, you guys need to take this, nationally. Together, we're gonna make this happen. You guys are. I mean, really, this show is really fantastic. You're asking me, I feel, all the right questions.
Well, thank you.
And it's coming from a super knowledgeable place. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody else that does it better.
Well, thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah.
There's some other questions I wanted to ask you about. In addition, we were talking the other day about companies experimenting with different delivery systems. And
yeah.
Illinois is kind of back on, not up to par on this. California's probably had, Washington and Oregon are there, but I think we're going to see a big change, especially after this pandemic's over, don't you? About where we can go with delivery. And the state laws have to change regarding this, I believe, especially with what we're going through today.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about just delivering product, there is an incredible network delivery.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily legal or legitimate. but part of the
black
reason,
market.
but the reason that there is so much competition through illegal instead of legal methods is, again, it goes back to our government, who isn't being kind. The people who own legitimate dispensaries have to pay so much money in taxes. That means that the price of their product has to go way up. That what you see in California, that's what's happening out there, is they're getting so much competition from just underground delivery services that they're having a hard time staying in business.
Washington and Oregon are experiencing the same thing because they allowed too many growers. The growers can't get their products into the dispensaries. So what do? They've gone back to being underground. And Charlie Batchel, who's the CEO of Cresco Labs here in Chicago, Alton and I were at a conference he spoke at. When was that? In December, Alton, where he actually discussed this subject and said, the black market will actually set the bar here. Because if we have a greater black market, it's because people are being overtaxed and things aren't going right. And that will be a barometer that they're always going to be available unless things get to the right point where they're equitable to all parties, including the high cost of getting into this industry and the taxation to the end user, as well as the dispensary owner, the grower, the distribution groups, everything. So I'd love you to talk about that.
I don't think distribution or delivery is the problem. It's really, it's just a bit about the competition and the amount of money legitimate dispensaries are being taxed to distribute the product, and people don't want to take them. They'd rather just get it through the black market.
Well, that's always going to be the cost, especially here in Chicago. I mean, even it's the hub of all black market goods. I mean, Chicago has always been the source since Al Capone. So if there's a bad price in the market, I mean, they're saying record-breaking numbers for sales in Illinois, but that's still with record-breaking black market sales, because now people can buy from the black market and get maybe an ounce for $3.50 as opposed to, a quarter for $3.50 at the dispensary, and then still walk around with it because it's less than 30 grams. An ounce is only 28 grams, and it's completely fine. And that'll always happen here in Chicago. And that's always going to be kind of the economics or the microeconomics here locally about if the price is right. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't a big law-abiding citizen bracket here as well that will only let themselves smoke it if they get it from the dispensary. So
Right.
Kind of a balance.
Yeah. No, but I don't think you can blame delivery or lack of delivery on the cannabis companies. I think it's there if people want it. It's just that if they're going to get delivery, they may go black market because it'll just be cheaper.
Well, there's also another issue as well. Let's say government says, great, let's approve delivery. We're not thinking about the big issue. Do you really want your delivery guy to walk around with thousands of dollars of cash in their hands, right? There's no really approved. There's some merchant deals that run the credit rails. I know Bill, if you're watching, put you a link to your website, True Harbor. They have a good solution using blockchain as well, more of a crypto deposit. But the issue is federal bank accounts, whereas their payment solution allows the digital wallet that acts like a bank account, so that it's a means of doing that. So if they approve delivery, well, that's going to be the next thing you have to figure out regardless, because if you can only pay cash, what delivery person is going to want to ride their bike or drive their car and then accept a $600 cash, and they probably have to make 10 deliveries. So by the end of their run, they're carrying around $6,000. I mean, that's going to be a target. So there has to be something done, I think, on the payment side for, any of that to progress as well.
Yeah. It's all of this stuff. Again, it's like the politics of it, the economics of it that'll that is incredibly frustrating and making everything move a lot slower than it should. But let's talk about a little different kind of delivery. Again, like looking at new products coming out on the market. One thing that I found fascinating over the last year of doing this is how different people are experimenting with putting THC or CBD in other, in edibles and other products, different delivery systems other than just smoking or vaping. And I think some of those things have been really creative. I've really enjoyed it. There's a company out of New York called Flavor Gum, FLAV, I think OUR. And they put CBD in chewing gum. Now, why that works is because if you should take your CBD like a couple of times a day, say you want to take it in the morning, do a little at noon, do some in the afternoon, which is the way it should be taken, little bits during the course of the day rather than ingesting it all at one time. This is just a really easy way to do it. Like, they make good sort of mint gum. I just pop a piece of gum in my mouth. I just chew on it and get 30 milligrams of CBD. My breath isn't so good in the middle of the day. Just take and pop in another piece of gum. I mean, I thought that was sort of brilliant, and I hope they succeed. They're a new company. We'll see.
I always stick it under the table and then use it later. Just kidding. But no, I do have some of their samples from MJ BizCon.
You aren't kidding.
Oh my God. So.
Yeah, the other one is this company out in Humboldt, California, which everybody knows is the cradle of cannabis in the United States. And what they're doing is they're putting THC and CBD in almost a tobacco pouch, like a dip, and it's got different flavors. It's like cinnamon and minty, but you just take and you stuff the pouch in, and you just keep it in your mouth for the next, 30 minutes or hour or however long you want to, and it just slowly goes into, it gets delivered via your sublingual, if I can say that.
Dumb question, but do you have to spit like the guys that chew tobacco?
No.
That's pretty gross.
Yeah, no.
Thank God you don't have
that could be adopted with baseball pretty quickly. I know they're all talking about CBD. I know actually Northern University has a lot of people. They were at one of our events looking into sports medicine for this. So I can see, I'm sure it's Big League Chew that they use, that big, great pouch of bubble gum. But I mean, a big pouch of CBD would probably be good for them and a good investment on the league, the franchise.
Yeah. Well, the guy that created it, his name is Case Mendel. He was like a surfer in Northern California, and all the surfers use dips too, like when they're out there on the waves. So that's sort of how he got that idea. But I don't know. To me, that's a really sort of fun way. I guess I like to have fresh breath.
Yeah, don't we all?
Have you guys seen any interesting, sort of strange cannabis products that are actually good and not just stupid?
In what sector or segment?
Well, sort of like I said, in this delivery world. Like I'll throw another one at you. There's a company called Able, and they have a thing called Tri Sleeps, Tri Strips. I'm sorry, TRI Strips, and it's a CBD sleep aid, and it's got melatonin and some other things in it. But basically, it's a little strip, and you put it on your tongue, and you let it just dissolve, and it's one of the better sleep aids that I've tested.
Mm-hmm.
So for devices or other things, I was at MJ BizCon, and I saw this neat little product from the Netherlands where you can go out and test your plant crop. It's a little piece about this big. You put your crop in it, and it'll tell you, or you put your sample in, it will give you an on-site readout of how much, if your product, if for instance CBD has too much THC in it, it can tell you that right from the field. And it was about a $1,500 product. I can't recall the name of the company, but I thought that was a neat product. Another product I saw out there, and I can't think of the name of it, was for doing decarboxylation. You put bud into something, put some oil in, and then you basically just turn it on for about an hour, and you've got your oil that you can go cook with.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I mean, products like that are going to take off. I mean, when we see these chef shows popping up on TV, and they're really good. And
there was one I just watched last night that's on Netflix, and it's kind of reminded me of the machine you just mentioned. They have a machine where it has a tube, and you push the button, and it smokes the food that you're eating. So you put the lid over it, and you push the button, and it just infuses whatever you're eating with smoke and gives it that smoky flavor. I think they made bacon mac and cheese or something like that. And I mean, that's dangerous, where you make food taste good while you want more food. It's a never-ending circle,
So Elton, just quickly, since you're concerned with more of the business side or the entrepreneurial side of the business, what do you think is, what do you think that the entrepreneur needs to know more about?
Well, when it comes to, a lot of things that I hear, I try to help and consult or point people in the right direction as much as possible. And a lot of people hear things on a high level, like you need to have, like, for instance, I'll use tonight, you need to have good packaging, but they can learn about what good packaging is, but how do they actually obtain someone that has it? For instance, what does good packaging mean? Does it mean that they need to go get lab testing from someone and have that disclosed? Or does it mean that they just need to say, hey, this is Alton's Gold CBD and it's made for the athlete. It's nano delivery and it has 1,000 milligrams of CBD per use, whatever, what does that mean? And that helps people vision it, because everyone nowadays, they're taking advantage of the competitive advantage, right? They're good at what they do. They have the vision, but how do they outsource everything else?
Yeah, I think you make an interesting point. And I have to say, all the companies, all the truly new reputable companies coming up do all of those things. They have the QR codes that we were talking about that gives people all the information that they need, all that deep dive stuff. But that's not what needs to be facing you on the counter. It's
Right.
really figuring out those two, like any other package of cornflakes or what have you. You need to figure out what the most important messaging is. And I would basically say, what is it for? How much is in this dosage? But all the deep stuff I would have in the little type in back. The thing that frustrates me is in most cases, they have some of the important stuff that's shoved in the back that they should have in the front. That's all.
So just to summarize, there's a lot of good packaging people, branding people that can help. It's really up to the visionary, or Alton and Alton's Gold CBD in this case, to come up with the story and what they want to be portrayed. So if you buy something that is a droplet tincture peel or, a cream, if it just says CBD oil as opposed to CBD oil for anti-inflammatory issues and pain, the consumer gets the difference because whoever decided it. It doesn't really matter who makes the packaging. Everyone's pretty much the same. It's about what you put on.
I think packaging is that's just design. That's how you take the information and put it on. It's the people that create the product that have to tell them what it is that they're trying to say. I think that that's just true in every case, and it's not easy.
Some companies tell their stories better than others.
Well, yeah, and I don't think people actually understand how hard it is to tell a story in 3 or 4 words, which is almost what you have to do. There's a company, I'm going to go outside of the cannabis realm right now, but there's a company that some people that I know that have just put out an amplifier product. And it's doing incredibly well, phenomenally well. And I believe that a lot of it had to do with, like, they literally spent 3 months, 4 months debating what their headline was going to be, what the name, what the small amounts of information was going to be and how to hit that right. And they test marketed that. Like they would take their 2 other names that they thought was going to work for this product, and they would put it up and see what people responded to. And I think that that's something that any cannabis company can certainly do and should do.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So I know you had an article recently about grooming ganjapreneurs in your magazine, and it's a show that I watch from time to time, the Marijuana Show.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Alton, if you're familiar with that, but it's a good show to watch. It's got 2 ladies on it, Karen Powell and Wendy Robbins.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it, but we were just talking about haircuts today. So grooming was on the topic. I mean, if you know anyone that wants to come to the 47th floor and give me a haircut, I'd love it.
Yeah, no,
I'll grow my ponytail back. Mine's getting long again, and I can't get my lady to cut my hair.
And my roots are terrible.
Yeah, mine too, Brad.
I'm trying to think, you've sort of caught me. Like, we've definitely covered,
We covered a lot of ground.
No, I mean, we covered the, we were talking a little bit about CBD chats and stuff like that. And I'm trying to think of the name. Like, we've covered like a few different shows, and it's just slipping my mind. I mean, the comedian Rachel Wolfson has a really interesting show, and she's a comedian. She talks about anxiety issues with anxiety and cannabis in a very sort of serious, cool way. Margaret Cho is actually somebody who talks about this stuff. And
what's Margaret's last name? I didn't catch that.
Cho.
Is she the comedian?
Yes.
Yeah, she's good. But why don't we do this? We're coming down to the last 10, 15 minutes or so of the show here. We got some questions popping up for Brad and crew. So why don't we jump into those and see what we take from there?
Take it away, Alton.
So the first question comes from Allison Jordan. She would like to know, your thoughts on the difference between gummies compared to tincture. She's trying for the first time.
Interesting. I think especially if you're trying for the first time, that the tinctures might be better because they're less delicious. I mean, my problem with the gummies is that some of them are so damn good that it's very frustrating just to eat one of them. But if you end up eating 2 or 3, you could end up in La La Land somewhere, or not with the proper dosage of CBD. So I would say tinctures, it's a little bit easier to control. It's, even though they make flavored one, it's a little less delicious. You'll be less tempted to overdo it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because with the tincture, you're getting some liposomal absorption through your mouth. So you can see the effects maybe in 20, 30 minutes. Plus, it depends if it's more of an alcohol, sugar base or oil base. But it typically, you can absorb it in 20 minutes, where I've seen people that eat delicious gummies and an hour later they don't feel anything. So they eat more gummies. And then you have the extra effects of 11-hydroxy THC joining in, because when you digest the THC, it breaks down to 11-hydroxy, which gives you that super high. So yeah, I would say tincture is the safe way to go as well.
Absolutely. But if you want a delicious gummy, this company ABX, it's the best.
ABX, I don't know if we have them here in Illinois.
Yeah, maybe not. You know who you do have in Chicago who's interesting, though, is this company called Serene. Are you familiar with Serene Cannabis?
I am not, but I would love a personal introduction.
Tell us a little bit about them, if you would.
Yeah, there's a woman named Erica Volker, Valker, I believe. And her and her husband originally based out on the West Coast. And she contracted Lyme disease. And this was a few years back. And almost died from it. And started on a whole different regime, started using CBD, finding all sorts of positive effects out of that, things that were helping her out, helping her health. So after that, after she got better, they started their own CBD THC company. I believe they're based in Chicago. And they're interesting because they're also experimenting with different cannabinoids. They have products with CBG in it and CBN.
Good. That's good. Well, if you've got that address or can get that for us, we'd really appreciate it, Brad.
Yep, no problem.
I got another question here from Scott. It's for you, Brad. It's, what's the craziest CBD infused product you've ever encountered?
The craziest CBD infused, you mean like the CBD lobster rolls?
I guess. I mean, I would think of the best THC infused gummies or product, maybe more than CBD. But
It's kind of interesting because you can't really get crazy with CBD. It's not psychoactive. So is it like the craziest, like Burger King Whoppers, like ridiculous, not expecting it, or?
Yeah. There are some pretty funny products out there, pretty interesting products. I'm not kidding you. There was a CBD lobster roll that I encountered, but there's been like CBD like gym workout clothes. There's a guy that's got a CBD mattress out there now, and they all seem to be fairly sincere in the endeavor. But I can't help but think that this is somehow gives it all a bad name.
I know. It just gets too crazy. Another question for you, Brad, from Julie. What are your thoughts on labeling terpenes, given that consumers are already confused by current packaging and not understanding MG, and there are benefits to labeling or not labeling terpenes right now, or for edibles, excuse me?
Boy, terpenes is an interesting, often overlooked topic. Because, I mean, you guys probably know this, but they say instead of like, when you're trying to guess what kind of strain or what kind of cannabis that you might like or that you might relate to, that it's almost better to go by the terpene that you enjoy rather than whether it's an indica or a sativa or any of these other things. It means that your body's responding to the smell in a certain kind of way. And I've had, a lot of bud tenders have said, like, forget about indica, forget about the sativa. Like, how does this smell to you? And if you find that smell, if you find that taste that you like, that's probably what you should stick with rather than it being an indica or a sativa. So I actually hear your the person calling in and wondering about the terpene thing. And I absolutely think that should be part of the labeling and the packaging. But that might be something for next level consumers. It's nice if they have it there that they can look into that.
I agree. Terpenes are important, and I think they're going to become more important and play a more important role as research starts to take place.
And that company, Leafly, I mentioned earlier, I flagged them because they really kind of, how they have those books, The Idiot's Guide to This, they really make it black and white. And they do a good job of labeling based off of terpenes, because some of these companies that, you have a cartridge, well, what you don't know is that dependent on the extraction method, they might not have any natural terpenes. They might have added them back in afterwards, which really is more of a flavor content as opposed to cold extraction, let's say, that's going to keep all those good ingredients. So some of these groups, like on Leafly, they'll have a yellow tint to them because it's lemon dominant, or maybe it's green because it's pinene, and it's very interesting because it allows you to understand, okay, this is a sativa strain with a lot of lemon. Okay, that's going to give me energy and it's going to make me happy. Great. That's what I'm looking for. And it goes back to what we were talking about before with really diagnosing based off of mood and experience as opposed to, a condition, right?
I could see a company, though, having a good time working with terpenes and making that part of the marketing of their product, to get back to something that you were saying before. I mean, there's no right way to get people to try a cannabis product, because people are going to be interested in it for different reasons.
I call it the guess and check product. It really is a guess and check product.
It's a guess and check product. But if somebody wanted to have fun with it, and really work with the terpenes and talk about that and how something tastes or how it mixes, like we've done a few columns in Cannabliss on pairing, wine with weed, or weed with chocolate. And a lot of that has to do with the terpenes in it. So you know, if I was going to get creative with my marketing, maybe I would do a product that told you your basic information, but gave you that terpene information. And hey, by the way, you could pair this with a delicious milk chocolate or whatever it would be. You could have fun doing that.
We could. Brad, tonight we're winding down here. It's been an hour and it's gone really fast. We've had a really good time spending time with you this evening. I have a question for you. We've got some questions on how to subscribe to Cannabliss Magazine, how to find you online, and you can also find Brad on LinkedIn. I'm sure you're on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not sure of that, but I'm going to ask you if you are, so people that were listening tonight can find you.
Yes, I am. Cannabliss, you can go to cannablismag.com. If you want to reach out to me for editorial reasons, you can reach out to me at brad@centennialmedia.com. My publishing company is called Centennial. And we don't do subscriptions. It's on the newsstand. But the good news is that the company that I work for is one of the top newsstand distributors in the country. We've made a lot of progress getting the magazine into stores that don't usually carry cannabis magazines, like CVS and even Stop and Shop and Whole Foods. So, you know, I guess the best thing for you to do is just sort of go out. I think Walmart's carries it.
And, you know, I've been a reader of this magazine since it came out, and I love your magazine. I get a lot of great information. You've got various coverage of subjects from the MD and the medical side of doctors to people creating careers. I mean, it's a good educational resource for any of you out there that would like to benefit from good, solid information that's valid. And Brad, I want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for spending an hour with us tonight and with our listeners, and thank you.
Oh, you guys have got a great
everybody
show.
Everybody out there, all his information will be posted when we reshare the video. So if you need any of his contact or you need to get a hold of his company, you'll be able to reach us there. And yeah, Brad, thanks for sharing all that great information. Dan, always a pleasure working with you.
You too, Alton. It's fun.
Thank you, Alton and Dan. Appreciate it. Great show.
Thank you, Brad. Have an awesome evening. Stay safe and healthy out in the New York, and where you're down in the Cape right now, right?
I'm in the Cape right now. Yeah.
Stay out there and relax.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.
Wednesday. We'll see you then.
Ciao for now.
Bye. Ciao.